This story is fictional and imaginary, created for storytelling purposes only. Still, I want to tell it the way it was lived, through my eyes, as if I were the one who walked into the palace and felt every quiet movement that followed. What you're about to hear is a dark and mysterious tale, slow and heavy with tension. It isn't about loud horror or sudden danger. It's about atmosphere, unspoken rules, and the weight of a single choice. There's a sense of emotional unease in this story, mixed with the strange calm that makes everything feel more unsettling the longer it lasts. In this imagined world, I remember stepping into a palace that looked timeless and elegant, a place where silence felt alive. Nothing warned me that one small mistake would change the tone of the night. No alarms, no open threats, just a shift in the air, like the walls themselves had noticed me. And then there was a presence quite watchful and impossible to ignore. This story leans into mystery and quiet danger, with a slow, immersive pace meant to pull you deeper into the setting. It's not about escape in the usual sense, it's about realizing too late that permission matters more than doors. So imagine walking beside me into that palace where every step feels choosing for you, and listen closely as the frictional night begins.
I made one mistake inside the vampire palace. She didn't let me leave. The sentence kept replaying in my head like a curse with perfect grammar, clean, final, and merciless, because it wasn't a metaphor and it wasn't a warning I'd heard in time. It was the exact shape of my life now. One wrong choice in a place that didn't forgive, and a woman in the dark who didn't need chains to keep me. The palace had looked dead from the outside, an ancient ribcage of black stone on a ridge above the forest, windows like empty eye sockets against a red moon. I told myself it was a ruin, a tourist trap, a dare from locals. Anything except what it actually was. The moment I stepped through its doors, the air changed. Not colder, different. Heavy with age and restraint. Like breath held for centuries. And then the door began to close behind me. Not slammed. Not rushed. Slowly, with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. I turned, palm out, instinctively reaching for the carved metal handle. Too late. The gap narrowed, sealing the hall's red moonlight into a thin blade that sliced across the floor before vanishing entirely. My phone's flashlight cut a trembling cone through dust. Tall pillars rose like petrified trees, black stone polished to a sheen that drank light. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. That was when I felt it, the presence at the far end of the Gothic hall. A figure standing in the shadow between two pillars, as still as an oil painting that had decided to breathe. Pale skin. Long dark hair. Eyes like embers that didn't flicker. She didn't move toward me. Didn't bare fangs. Didn't hiss or lunge like the movies. She simply watched, calm, composed as if my arrival had been expected, scheduled, and approved. A royal cloak fell from her shoulders in layered darkness. The red moonlight found the edge of it and died there. I swallowed and tried to speak, but my throat made the sound of someone realizing they'd made a mistake after the receipt printed. "I'm sorry," I said anyway. I didn't know anyone lived here." Her voice reached me from across the hall like velvet dragged over a blade. "You knew enough to come." I wanted to argue. I wanted to insist this was an accident. That I was just a man who'd taken a wrong turn off a mountain road, who'd seen an open gate, who'd thought, idiotically, that an abandoned palace might offer shelter from the storm. But she was right and we both knew it. I had come for a story. And now I was inside one. My name is Elias Ward, and before that night I was the kind of person who believed fear was mostly chemistry, adrenaline, cortisol, the nervous system doing its ancient job. I filmed abandoned places for money. Not the polished urban exploration nonsense with sponsorships and staged jump scares. The real work. Long walks through rain, rust, rot, quiet hazards, and the thrill of being somewhere forgotten. I made a living convincing other people to feel something through a screen. That week the algorithm had turned on me. Views dipped. Sponsors hesitated. I drove deeper into the mountains chasing a rumor. A palace that didn't show up on maps, a castle locals called the Vesper Court. They said the red moon was brightest above it. They said no one who entered came out the same. I laughed on camera when I heard it. The laugh sounded confident in the recording. It did not feel confident in my chest. The road was a thin scar through pine and fog. My GPS spun uselessly, then died. The rain thickened until it wasn't drops but a moving curtain. Headlights cut short tunnels through the night. My hands tightened around the wheel, knuckles pale. Then the palace appeared. Not emerging gradually like a hill or a tree. It was simply there, as if the world had been built around it and only now allowed me to notice. A gate of iron stood open. The driveway climbed toward the main structure. Black stone, towering, sharp angles softened by age. Gargoyles clung to ledges, not decorative so much as watchful. The red moon hung behind it, swollen and wrong, staining the clouds like bruised fruit. I should have turned around. Instead, I parked and got out, rain soaking my jacket in seconds. The air smelled of wet moss and something metallic, like pennies warmed in a fist. I stepped through the gate and felt a pressure in my ears, the way you do when an elevator moves too fast. My heartbeat stumbled, then corrected itself. Okay, I whispered to myself. Just a building. The front doors were massive, ornate, carved with patterns that might have been vines or bones. One side was slightly ajar. A narrow invitation. I raised my camera and spoke in the tone that paid my bills. All right, guys. This is it. Vesper Court. If the locals are right, I'm about to get cursed. Smash that like button if you... The joke died on my tongue as I pushed the door. The hinges didn't squeal. They didn't fight. The door opened as if it had been waiting for my hand. Inside, the hall swallowed me. The air was dry despite the storm outside. Warm but not comforting. Like skin that's been under a lamp too long. My flashlight swept across the floor, black marble with veins of dark red. Dust hung in the beam, slow and thick. Pillars rose to a ceiling lost in shadow. Arched windows lined the walls, their stained glass dark except for the red moonlight streaming through in narrow shafts. And then the door behind me began to close. At first I thought it was the draft. I turned and shoved at it, but the gap narrowed without resistance, the palace taking it back. My palm met cold metal. The handle was there, but it didn't budge. I tried again, harder. Nothing. The click when it sealed was soft. Final. My breath sounded too loud. A tremor ran through me, not just fear but the sudden sense that I'd crossed an invisible line and the rules had changed. Hello? I called, forcing my voice to fill the space. Anyone here? I'm sorry, I thought this place was abandoned. Silence answered, then something else. A faint echo of my own voice returning with a delay that felt wrong. Not acoustics. Something mimicking me. I took a step forward, flashlight shaking. The hall seemed to lengthen. The far end was swallowed in shadow. And then she was there. Not appearing. Not stepping into the light. Just present, as if my eyes had finally been allowed to register her. A woman in shadow, pale as moonlit marble. Long dark hair. Crimson eyes that reflected my flashlight with a dull, predatory glow. An elegant cloak draped over her shoulders, regal and heavy. She stood with perfect posture, hands at her sides, not threatening, worse than threatening. In control. She looked at me like I was something she'd already decided what to do with. You came, she said. My throat tightened. I'm leaving, I managed, though the words sounded like a lie even as I spoke them. Her gaze flicked briefly toward the sealed door behind me, then back to my face. No, she said simply. You are not. The panic that hit me was fast and childish. I lunged for the door anyway, grabbing the handle with both hands, yanking until my shoulders burned. Nothing. I turned back, breathing hard. Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just a guy. I'll go, I won't tell anyone. You already told them, she interrupted, eyes shifting to the camera in my hand. The red dot blinking in the dark felt suddenly obscene. You brought witnesses. I stared. How do you? I know what enters my home. Her voice softened, not kindly but with the patience of someone explaining a law of nature. And I know what you are. My mouth went dry. What am I? She took one step forward, and the shadows seemed to move with her like a cloak within the cloak. A mistake, she said. Something inside me snapped, not courage but survival. I lifted the camera like it could protect me. If you hurt me, people will come looking. Her lips curved, not a smile. A recognition. They will not find you, she said. And I will not hurt you. She paused as if choosing the next words carefully. Not unless you make me. I stood there, rainwater dripping from my hair onto the palace floor, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it could bruise my ribs. I made a mistake, I whispered. Yes, she said. Inside the vampire palace. The way she spoke the title of my fear like she'd read it from a script, made my stomach drop. And you will not leave, she finished, and it wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Time did strange things in that hall. It stretched, then folded. The seconds between her words felt longer than the drive up the mountain. I forced myself not to run. Running would make me pray. My body didn't care about logic, but my mind clung to it like a railing. Vampire, I said, as if speaking the word might make it less real. You're actually... Do you require proof? She asked. I didn't want proof. Proof meant the world I understood had cracked open. She began to walk toward me, footsteps silent on marble. My flashlight beam trembled over her cloak, catching faint patterns stitched into the fabric, symbols that looked like old alphabets half erased by time. I backed up until my spine met a pillar. Cold stone pressed through my jacket. Stay there, I said, voice shaking. Just stay there. Tell me what you want. Her gaze didn't leave my face. You assume I want something. I laughed, sharp and panicked. People don't trap strangers in palaces for no reason. Her eyes narrowed slightly as if the word people amused her. I am not trapping you, she said. I am keeping you. That word, keeping, hit harder than any threat. It implied possession. Choice already made. Why? I demanded. She stopped a few paces away. Close enough that I could see the texture of her skin, too smooth like porcelain, and the faint shadows under her eyes that weren't fatigue but depth. Because you entered, she said. That's not an answer. It is the oldest answer, she replied. In my world, the threshold is law. You crossed without invitation, and the palace responded as it always has. I stared at the door, then back at her. The building did this? The palace is not a building, she said. It is a covenant. My mind tried to grab onto something familiar. Architecture, history, myths. I had read about old castles built on bloodlines, about legends where the stones remembered. You're the owner? I asked. Her lips parted slightly as if she tasted the question. I am Lady Seraphine Vesper. The name sounded like the palace itself. Elegant, heavy, dangerous. And you're going to, what? Keep me here forever? She tilted her head. Forever is a human exaggeration. But yes. Until the palace releases you. And when will that be? Her eyes glowed brighter in the dim light. When it has taken what it needs. My stomach clenched. Taken what? She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze shifted past me toward something deeper in the palace. It wasn't longing. It was calculation. You are afraid, she said. Of course I'm afraid. No, she corrected. You are afraid in a way that is familiar. I swallowed. Congratulations. You've met a man with survival instincts. Her expression softened just a fraction, enough to be unsettling. You have grief, she said. The word hit like a hand closing around my throat. I don't know what you're talking about, I snapped. But my face betrayed me. I felt it. The reflexive tightening around my eyes, the way my jaw locked. Seraphine watched it with the stillness of someone observing a wound. You carry it like iron, she murmured. Dense. Hidden. Always there. My hands clenched around the camera. Stop. She took a step closer and the air between us thickened. I smelled something faint, rose petals left too long in a book, and beneath that, the metallic note again. I will not touch you without permission, she said, voice low. But you must understand, you are not here by accident. Then why am I here? I demanded, heat rising. Anger was easier than fear. Seraphine's gaze held mine, unblinking. Because you called, she said. I stared. I didn't call anyone. You did, she insisted. Not with your mouth. With your longing. With the way you roam ruins like a starving man searching for a ghost. The words felt too close to truth. My throat tightened. You don't know me, I whispered. I know enough, she said. And the palace knows more. A sound echoed through the hall, soft like a distant chime. The dust in my flashlight beam trembled. The pillars seemed to inhale. Seraphine looked upward as if listening to something beyond hearing. It is awake, she said. My pulse spiked. What is? The court, she replied. The hunger. The memory. I wanted to run again, but my feet wouldn't move. Seraphine turned away from me, cloak whispering over stone. Come, she said like it was inevitable. If you remain here, the palace will unmake you. It prefers movement. I laughed bitter. So I'm safer deeper inside. Her glance over her shoulder was almost pity. Safer is a word humans use to lie to themselves. Still, she walked, and the hall behind her seemed to open like a throat. I hesitated, then followed, because the alternative was standing alone in a sealed hall with a building that breathed. My footsteps echoed, loud and clumsy. Hers did not. We passed arched doorways that led into darkness. Tapestries hung along the walls, their scenes faded but still visible in the red moonlight. Figures kneeling, crowns, blood like ribbons, a woman in a cloak standing above them all. Seraphine paused before a staircase that spiraled upward. This palace was built to keep what is inside, she said, voice distant. Not to keep people out. I stared at the stairs. What's inside? Her eyes met mine again, crimson and calm. You, she said. And then she ascended. The palace had corridors that didn't behave. Hallways curved where they shouldn't. Doors appeared where walls had been. My sense of direction dissolved like sugar in water. Seraphine moved as if she knew every bend, not memorized but inherent. As if the palace was an extension of her body, and every room was a thought she could enter at will. We walked beneath vaulted ceilings painted with constellations that didn't match any sky I'd seen. The stars were arranged into patterns, sigils maybe, or maps. You're real, I said finally because my brain kept trying to reject it. This isn't some elaborate. You want it to be a trick, she said without looking back. I want it to be survivable. Survival, she said softly, is not the same as living. We reached a pair of doors carved with roses and thorns. Seraphine pressed her palm to the wood. There was no handle. The doors opened anyway, inward, silent. Inside was a library. Not the dusty kind in old mansions. This was a cathedral of books. Shelves rose 3 stories high, ladders attached to rails. Candles burned without smoke along the walls, their flames steady as if the air didn't dare disturb them. The smell of paper hit me, dry, old, comforting in a way that felt like a trap. Books were normal. Books were human. At the center of the room stood a long table of dark wood. On it lay a single open book, its pages blank. Seraphine gestured toward it. Sit. The command wasn't harsh. That made it worse. My body responded before my pride could argue. I sat, camera still in my hands like a talisman. Seraphine stood across from me. The candlelight painted her face in warm tones that didn't suit her, softening her features until she almost looked alive. Almost. What is this? I asked, nodding at the blank book. A record, she said, of what enters and what leaves. It's empty. It is waiting, she corrected. It writes when it is fed. A chill ran through me. Fed what? Seraphine's gaze dropped to my hands. Blood if you offer it, she said calmly. Or memory if you cannot. I flinched. No. Her expression didn't change. Then memory. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against stone. I'm not giving you anything. Seraphine didn't move. You already have, she said. The moment you stepped through the door. My anger flared. That's not how consent works. For the first time, something sharp flickered across her face. Not guilt, but irritation, as if I'd accused a storm of being unfair. Consent, she repeated slowly. Your world is young. It believes words can tame hunger. She leaned forward slightly, eyes bright. Do you think the deer consents when the wolf takes it? My hands trembled. So I'm prey. Seraphine's voice softened again, and that softness felt like a hand sliding into my chest. You are not prey, she said. You are a key. I froze. A key to what? She lifted one hand and traced the air above the blank pages. The paper shimmered faintly like skin responding to touch. To a door that has been closed too long, she said. A door I cannot open alone. I stared at her, suspicion curdling with fear. So you trapped me because you need me for something. Yes, she said, simple as breathing. The honesty disarmed me more than a lie would have. What do you need? I asked, voice rough. Seraphine's gaze held mine. A human heart, she said. I let out a harsh laugh, incredulous. You could have picked anyone. Why me? Because yours is cracked, she replied. And cracks let light in. The words made my throat tighten in spite of myself. I hated that she saw me. I hated that some part of me wanted to be seen. My heart is fine, I lied. Seraphine's eyes slid to the camera on the table, the red record light blinking. You came here to film emptiness, she said. But emptiness is not what you are searching for. I swallowed. My voice came out quieter. You don't know what I'm searching for. Her gaze sharpened, and in it I saw something old, something that had watched centuries of humans make the same mistakes. I know loss, she said. I know what it does to men who pretend they are whole. A silence settled between us, thick as velvet. My chest hurt. Not from fear now, but from the sudden pressure of a memory I didn't want to feel. What's your name again? I asked, stalling, clinging to anything. Seraphine, she said. Lady of this court. And you've been here how long? Her eyes flicked away for the first time. Long enough to forget the sound of ordinary laughter, she murmured. Long enough to stop dreaming in color. The vulnerability was so unexpected it startled me. I leaned forward despite myself. Why can't you leave? Seraphine's lips pressed together. Because I made a mistake, she said. The parallel hung in the air like a blade. What mistake? I whispered. She looked at the blank book, not at me. I invited the wrong thing in, she said. And the palace punished me for it. My skin prickled. What did you invite? Seraphine's voice dropped to something barely audible. A promise, she said. The candles flickered, though there was no wind. The blank pages of the book rippled, as if something beneath them shifted. Seraphine's gaze snapped back to me. Do you hear it? She asked. I listened. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, something like a heartbeat. Not mine. Deeper. Slower. Coming from the walls. My breath caught. That's the palace? Seraphine nodded once. It is hungry, she said. And now it knows you are here. She reached across the table and placed her pale hand beside mine, close but not touching. Elias Ward, she said. My blood went cold. How do you know? I told you, she whispered. I know what enters my home. Hearing my name spoken in her voice felt like being claimed by something ancient. You have two choices, Seraphine said. You can fight the palace alone. Or you can work with me. I stared at her hand, at the space between us. And if I work with you? Her crimson eyes softened, almost human. Then I will do everything in my power, she said, to let you leave. I didn't believe her. But I believed the palace's heartbeat, steady and patient, like something waiting to feed. And I believed the sealed door behind me, far away now but still real. My voice came out like a confession. What do you want me to do? Seraphine's hand finally touched mine, just the back of her fingers against my skin. Cold, not cruel. The blank pages shivered. Give the palace a story, she said. And in exchange, it may release you. I stared, breath caught. It's writing? Seraphine watched the pages with a grim satisfaction. Yes, she said. Feed it. My hand shook. Why does it want this? Because memory is the only blood that never dries, she replied. I hated the poetry of it. I hated that it was true. The room felt smaller now, the candles brighter, the shadows sharper. I could feel the palace listening, hungry and intent. Mara died, I said, voice tight. The word died etched itself onto the page in dark script. Seraphine's face didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. Recognition. How? She asked, and it wasn't curiosity. It was the careful question of someone approaching a cliff edge. I tried to swallow, but my throat didn't work. Car accident, I said. Or, that's what everyone calls it. The page wrote, Seer. Accident. I laughed once, broken. She wasn't drunk, if that's what you're thinking. She wasn't reckless. She was the careful one. Seraphine's fingers tightened slightly on mine. Cold pressure, grounding. What happened? She asked again. I closed my eyes. The memory rose like floodwater. We were on a bridge at night, Mara driving, me in the passenger seat. The radio low. She was talking about something stupid. Some podcast she'd gotten into, some conspiracy about missing towns. I teased her, half listening. I was always half listening. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. A message. Something trivial. I glanced down. I looked away from her. I didn't see the deer until Mara swore and jerked the wheel. The headlights swung. The guardrail flashed. The sickening weightlessness as the car lifted, the sound of metal tearing, Mara's breath turning into a scream that didn't finish. And then water. Cold black pressing in. I opened my eyes in the library, gasping. My cheeks were wet. I hadn't realized I was crying until I tasted salt. Seraphine watched me like a statue that had learned mercy the hard way. It was my fault, I whispered. I distracted her. I made one mistake and... The palace heartbeat thudded, satisfied. The book wrote, one mistake. My stomach lurched. The words on the page felt like a verdict. Seraphine leaned closer. You survived, she said softly. I shouldn't have. That is not yours to decide, she said, but her voice trembled slightly, so faint I almost imagined it. I stared at her. You've done this before, I said. You've taken people's memories. Seraphine's gaze flicked away. The palace has, she corrected. Not me. But you use it. Her jaw tightened. I endure it, she said. The book's pages turned on their own as if impatient. More blank pages waited, hungry. Seraphine lifted her hand from mine, and the cold absence made my skin ache. You are giving it what it wants, she said. And it is giving you what you avoid, the truth in full. The first memory came not like a thought but like a bruise being pressed. Seraphine didn't ask me to bleed. She didn't bring out a blade or a goblet. She simply kept her fingers on mine and looked into my eyes as if reading a language my body didn't know it was speaking. Do not force it, she murmured. The palace hates being lied to. I'm not lying, I said, but my voice was already unsteady. Seraphine's gaze didn't waver. Tell me your first truth, she said. The one you avoid. My mouth opened then closed. I could have said 100 things, that I was scared, that I didn't belong here, that I wanted to go home. But my first truth wasn't any of those. It was her name. Mara, I whispered. The words slid out of me like blood from a reopened wound. Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly. Who is Mara? I swallowed hard. My sister, I said. The palace heartbeat deepened as if leaning closer. The blank pages of the book began to darken, not with ink but with a shadow that formed letters. Words appeared in curling script, written by nothing visible. Mara Ward. I wiped my face, angry at myself. So what now? It eats my grief and spits out ink? Seraphine's eyes sharpened. Now, she said, you understand the bargain. What bargain? I snapped. She stepped back, cloak settling around her like a shadow regaining its shape. The palace will take, she said. Always. It will take memories, blood, names. But it can also open doors. I stared at the written words. Mara's name, my confession, etched into permanence. You said it might let me leave, I said. Seraphine's gaze hardened. I said I would do everything in my power, she corrected. Do not confuse me with the palace. My anger flared again. So you can't promise anything? No, she said. I can promise effort. I can promise strategy. I can promise that if you are to be consumed, you will not be consumed alone. The last line wasn't comforting. It was terrifying in a different way. The candles flickered again. Somewhere deeper in the palace, something shifted, stone grinding against stone like a throat clearing. Seraphine turned her head, listening. It wants more, she said. My voice shook. I don't have more. Seraphine looked back at me, and for the first time I saw a hint of something like regret. Yes, she said quietly. You do. Sleep didn't come when Seraphine led me to a guest chamber that looked like a museum of someone else's life. The bed was massive, draped in dark fabric that felt too smooth. The windows were tall and narrow, their glass tinted so the red moonlight stained the room like wine. A fire burned in the hearth without crackling, its flames silent. Seraphine stood near the door, hands folded. You will not die in your sleep, she said as if that was generosity. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted down to my bones. That's reassuring. She watched me, expression unreadable. You believe I am your enemy, she said. Aren't you? Seraphine's gaze lingered on my face. I am not your friend, she replied. But enemies are simpler than this. The honesty again. It made my skin prickle. What are you then? I asked. Her eyes drifted toward the fire. A prisoner, she said. The word landed heavy. I laughed bitterly. You're the lady of a palace. And yet I cannot leave, she said. And you cannot leave. Titles do not unlock doors. I rubbed my forehead, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. So the palace is alive. Seraphine nodded once. It was built with blood and vows, she said. Vows harden into walls. Blood remembers. Together, they become a thing. And it feeds on memories. Yes, she said. And on time. And on longing. My throat tightened. Why does it do that? Seraphine's gaze sharpened as if this was a childish question. Because it is empty, she said. And emptiness hates itself. I stared at her, suddenly thinking of the way I'd chased abandoned places like a man chasing a mirror. Why me? I asked again, quieter now. Seraphine's eyes flicked to the door as if checking the palace's mood. Because you came under a red moon, she said. And because you carry a death that was not finished. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? Seraphine's voice lowered. Not all deaths end cleanly, she said. Some leave threads. I felt nauseous. Are you saying, Mara? Seraphine held up a hand. Do not say her name like a spell, she warned. The palace listens. I swallowed. Then what am I supposed to do? Just not think about her? Seraphine's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. You have been not thinking about her for a long time, she said. It has not saved you. Silence stretched between us. The fire's light painted her face with a false warmth. For a moment she looked like a woman standing in a room, not a predator. I don't understand you, I said. You do not have to, she replied. You only have to survive. I exhaled shakily. How? Seraphine stepped closer to the window. The red moonlight caught her profile, sharp and beautiful in a way that wasn't inviting, just inevitable. The palace will test you, she said. It will offer you exits that are not exits. It will offer you comfort that is a trap. It will try to make you give it everything willingly. My throat tightened. And if I don't? Seraphine turned back to me. Then it will take, she said. Violently. I stared at her. And you? What do you want? Seraphine's eyes held mine, and for the first time I saw something like hunger that wasn't physical. Hunger for something else. Something human. I want the palace to release me, she said. And I want the thing I invited in, to be gone. My pulse quickened. What thing? Seraphine's jaw tightened. A king, she said. The word made the room feel colder. Vampire king? Seraphine's lips pressed into a thin line. Not vampire, she said. Older. My skin prickled. And you invited him in? Her eyes flashed, anger and shame braided together. I was young, she said, and the lie in that word, young, was obvious. She meant something else. Less experienced. Less scarred. I thought I could bargain. I thought I could tame what was hungry. I swallowed. And the palace punished you. Yes, she said. It sealed itself. It sealed me. It sealed him. A grinding sound echoed faintly through the walls, like stone shifting. Seraphine's gaze snapped toward the corridor beyond the door. It hears us, she murmured. My voice shook. So what's the plan? Seraphine looked at me, crimson eyes steady. We will feed it, she said. On our terms. Enough to make it open the inner door. What's behind the inner door? I asked. Seraphine's expression went distant, haunted. The throne room, she said. And the king I bound. My mouth went dry. And you need me because, what? I'm bait. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. You are human, she said. He cannot resist what you are. What I am, I repeated, bitter. A cracked heart. The palace didn't wait for morning. I drifted into a thin, uneasy sleep and woke to the sound of something scratching, soft, repetitive, like nails on wood. My eyes snapped open. The room was darker now, the fire reduced to embers. Red moonlight still bled through the window. The scratching came again. From the inside of the wardrobe across the room. I sat up slowly, heart hammering. My brain tried to rationalize. Rats settling would wind. But Seraphine had said the palace would test me. And the palace had already learned my sister's voice. The wardrobe door trembled slightly. Then a whisper slid through the crack. Eli. My throat tightened. Mara? The word barely escaped. It felt obscene to say it here. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then the wardrobe door opened a fraction. A pale hand emerged, slim fingers, familiar freckles on the knuckles. My stomach lurched. Mara had freckles. She used to complain they made her look like a child. The hand reached toward me, trembling. "Help me," a voice whispered from inside the wardrobe. "Please." It was her voice. Not an echo. Not a mimic. It was Mara crying. Seraphine stepped closer, stopping just out of reach. "Yes," she said softly. "And because you still hope." That was the cruelest thing anyone had ever said to me because it was true. Seraphine turned toward the door. "Rest," she said. "The palace will not allow you peace for long." As she left, the door closed behind her with that same slow patience. Not locking me in, just reminding me that everything here moved on its own schedule. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling where painted stars formed unfamiliar constellations. In the silence, I heard it again, the palace heartbeat, deep in the walls, steady and hungry. And beneath it, faint as a whisper through stone, something else. A voice. Not Seraphine's. Not mine. A murmur that sounded like my sister saying my name. "Elias." I sat up, breath caught. The palace, I realized, wasn't just feeding on my memories. It was learning how to use them. My body moved before my mind could stop it. I swung my legs off the bed, feet hitting cold stone. I crossed the room in a daze, every step dragging me deeper into an impossible hope. The wardrobe door creaked wider. Inside was darkness, too deep, like a hole cut into reality. "Mara?" I whispered again, voice breaking. The hand reached farther, fingers grasping air as if drowning. "Elias," she sobbed. "I can't breathe. It's cold. Please." I grabbed the wardrobe door, yanked it open. The darkness inside surged forward like a wave. Not emptiness. A corridor. A corridor of black water. And in it, my sister's face surfaced, pale, hair floating around her like weeds, eyes wide with terror. Just like the night of the crash. She reached for me, mouth opening in a silent scream as water poured in. I froze, horror and longing colliding so hard I couldn't move. The corridor inside the wardrobe widened, pulling at the air, pulling at me. A force yanked my shirt forward. I stumbled, one hand gripping the wardrobe frame. "No." Mara's hand grabbed my wrist, cold and slippery. "Elias," she gasped, and her voice changed, deepened, became something else. "Come back," it said. The grip tightened like iron. Panic finally snapped me free. I braced my feet, yanked my arm back, tearing my wrist out of the cold hand's grasp. Skin burned where it touched me as if frostbitten. I slammed the wardrobe door with all my strength. The impact shook the room. The scratching returned instantly, furious now, and the whisper turned into a hiss. "Open." I staggered back, breath ragged. My wrist throbbed, already bruising dark. The door rattled as something inside pushed. I grabbed my camera from the bed, not because it could help but because I needed something real in my hands. The screen lit my face in pale blue. The wardrobe shook harder. Then, suddenly, silence. I stood trembling, sweat cold on my spine. A knock sounded at the chamber door. One soft knock. Polite. I almost sobbed with relief. "Elias," Seraphine's voice called through the wood. "Do not open the wardrobe." My blood ran cold. "You knew." I croaked. Another pause. "I heard it begin," she said. "Open the door. Now." I ran to the chamber door and yanked it open. Seraphine stood in the corridor, cloak drawn tight. Her eyes flashed crimson in the dim. She took one look at my wrist and her expression hardened. "It touched you," she said. "I thought it was her," I whispered, ashamed of my own desperation. Seraphine stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She moved to the wardrobe, placing her palm against it. The wood vibrated beneath her hand like a living thing breathing too fast. Seraphine's jaw clenched. "It is learning," she murmured. "What is it?" I demanded, voice cracking. "Is it the king?" Seraphine's eyes stayed on the wardrobe. "No," she said quietly. "This is the palace itself." My stomach dropped. "The palace did that?" "It offers you what you want," Seraphine said. "So you will step into it willingly." I swallowed hard. It showed me the crash. Seraphine's gaze flicked to my face. "It will show you worse," she said. "It will show you what you believe you deserve." The wardrobe rattled again, a low thump from inside like a heartbeat too. Seraphine drew a thin dagger from within her cloak. The blade was dark metal, etched with symbols similar to the ones on her cloak. I recoiled. You said you wouldn't? This is not for you, she snapped, sharper than before. She pressed the dagger tip to her own palm. Before I could stop her, she cut. Blood welled, black in the low light, thicker than human blood. She smeared it across the wardrobe door in a quick symbol like writing a curse. The wood hissed softly as if burned. The rattling stopped. Seraphine exhaled slowly, shoulders tense. I stared at her bleeding hand. You can bleed, I whispered. Seraphine's eyes flicked to me, irritated. Everything can bleed, she said. If you know where to cut. She wrapped her hand in cloth, the blood already slowing as if obeying her. What now? I asked, voice small. Seraphine looked at me, really looked, and the calm authority in her face cracked just enough to reveal something like fear. Now, she said, you understand, the palace is not just hungry. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. It is jealous, she whispered, of what you still have. I stared at her, confused. What do I still have? Seraphine's crimson eyes held mine, and in them I saw something like grief reflected back at me. You can still say her name and feel it, she said. You can still break. Her gaze flicked to my bruised wrist. I cannot, she added. Not anymore. And then from inside the wardrobe, a faint whisper slipped through the sealed wood. Seraphine. Her name spoken like a caress. Seraphine went very still. I watched her face change, not into fear but into something colder. Hatred. That, she said softly, is him. Seraphine did not explain immediately. She led me out of the chamber with the urgency of someone evacuating a burning house, though the palace remained quiet, patient. We moved through corridors that shifted subtly as we walked. Doors I remembered from before were now blank walls. Staircases appeared where none had been. The palace rearranged itself like a mind changing its story mid-sentence. Where are we going? I asked, struggling to keep up. Seraphine didn't slow. To the chapel, she said. Your palace has a chapel? It has everything humans have ever built to beg for mercy, she replied. It keeps the shapes even if it does not keep the faith. We entered a circular room with a domed ceiling. The air here was colder, sharper, smelling faintly of incense long burned away. The chapel was carved from the same black stone, but its pillars were thinner, more delicate, like ribs. At the far end stood an altar of dark marble. Above it hung a stained glass window depicting a red sun, wrong, inverted, casting crimson light across the floor. Candles lined the walls, unlit. Seraphine stopped before the altar and turned to face me. Her composure had returned, but it was brittle. You heard him, she said. Yes, I replied, voice tight. He said your name. Seraphine's lips curled slightly. He likes to remind me he is present, she said. Who is he? I demanded. And why does he sound like he's been inside my head? Seraphine looked past me as if making sure the chapel's shadows were loyal. His name is Lucien, she said finally. Once. The name rang in the air like a bell. Lucien Vesper, she added. My stomach dropped. Vesper. Like the palace. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. He built this court, she said. Not with hands. With hunger. I stared. He's your what? Husband? Brother? Seraphine's face hardened. He is my maker, she said. The phrase made me nauseous. He turned you into. Yes, she said, cutting me off. And then he left me with the wreckage. My mind raced, trying to stitch the pieces together. So he's trapped here too. Seraphine nodded. When I realized what he was, she said, voice low, I tried to bind him. I thought the palace would help me. And it did, I said. Her eyes flickered with bitterness. It helped itself, she corrected. It sealed him inside its deepest chamber. And it sealed me as his jailer. My throat tightened. So you're stuck guarding him? Yes, she said. For centuries. The weight of that word pressed on me. Centuries. A punishment measured in lifetimes. And now, I whispered, it brought me here. Seraphine's gaze turned sharp. It did, she said. Because the seal is weakening. A chill ran through me. Why? Seraphine's jaw clenched. Because I am tired, she admitted. And because the palace is hungry enough to make foolish bargains. My heart pounded. What bargain? Seraphine stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the stone itself might eavesdrop. It wants a new story, she said. A new tragedy. A new bond. My stomach twisted. You mean, it wants me to replace you? Seraphine's eyes held mine, and for the first time I saw a crack in her control, fear sharpened by fury. Yes, she said. It wants you to become his new tether. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No. No, that's insane. Seraphine's voice hardened. Nothing in this place is sane, she snapped. Then, softer, that is why you must not listen when it speaks in your sister's voice. I swallowed, throat raw. Why does he want me? Seraphine's gaze turned distant, as if remembering something she wished she couldn't. Lucien loves broken things, she said. Not because he wishes to fix them. Because they are easier to enter. My skin crawled. And he cannot step beyond the inner door, she continued, unless a human invites him. I stared at her. Invite him? Like you invited him? Her eyes flashed with anger and shame. Yes, she said. Like that. The red-stained glass window cast blood-colored light over her face, making her look almost demonic. Yet her expression was painfully human. Someone who had made one mistake and paid for it forever. A thought surfaced, unwanted. So the palace is helping him? Seraphine's lips pressed thin. The palace wants freedom, she said. It wants the seal broken because the seal is also a restraint on it. Lucien's hunger and the palace's hunger are intertwined. She leaned closer, voice sharp. If he escapes, the palace becomes something worse than a prison. It becomes a mouth. My hand shook. So what do we do? Seraphine turned to the altar. On it lay an object I hadn't noticed at first. A silver bowl, tarnished, engraved with the same thorn patterns as the library doors. She lifted it carefully. This, she said, is the chalice of threshold. It is older than this court. It responds to human choice. I stared at it. And? Seraphine held it out to me. You must make a vow, she said. A vow the palace cannot twist. My laugh came out harsh. How do you make a vow a living palace can't twist? Seraphine's eyes narrowed. By making it about yourself, she said. Not about what you want. Not about what you fear. About what you will do. My throat tightened. What do I vow? Seraphine's gaze held mine, and the chapel's red light made her eyes burn. You vow, she said, that you will not invite him. No matter what voice calls you. No matter what face appears. No matter what the palace offers. I hesitated. The vow felt like stepping onto thin ice. And if I break it? I whispered. Seraphine's expression went cold. Then you will not leave, she said. And neither will I. Not in any way that matters. The chapel seemed to hold its breath. Even the dust stopped drifting. I stared at the chalice, then at Seraphine, and I realized something terrible. She wasn't asking for my help out of kindness. She was asking because she had no other option. And maybe neither did I. I reached out and took the chalice. It was colder than ice, heavy as regret. What do I do? I asked. Seraphine nodded once. Speak, she said. And mean it. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway into the red light and the listening stone. I vow, I said, that I will not invite Lucien Vesper into me. I will not open any door for him. No matter what it costs. The chalice vibrated faintly in my hands. Somewhere deep in the palace, a door creaked. Seraphine exhaled slowly, eyes closing for a heartbeat, relief or exhaustion or both. Then she looked at me again. It heard you, she said. Now we see if it respects you. After the vow, the palace became quieter. Not calmer, quieter in the way a predator becomes quiet when it realizes the prey has teeth. Seraphine guided me through halls that now felt watchful. Every tapestry seemed slightly altered. Faces and woven scenes turned their heads a fraction more than before. The palace adapted. We returned to the library. The blank book on the table lay open, pages filled now with my confession. Mara's name. The crash. The words looked darker than ink, like stains. Seraphine stood beside it. The palace will retaliate, she said. Because I made the vow? Because you denied it what it wanted, she replied. It wanted you pliable. It wanted you desperate. I stared at the book. It already has me desperate. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Desperation is not the same as surrender, she said. A tremor ran through the shelves, subtle. A book slipped from a high row and thudded to the floor without anyone touching it. I flinched. Seraphine's eyes tracked the fallen book. It is restless, she said. What now? I asked. Seraphine moved to the book on the floor, picked it up with careful hands. The cover was cracked leather, no title. She opened it. The pages were filled with names. Hundreds. Thousands. Written in the same curling script as the record book. Some names were crossed out. Some had dates. Some had notes in the margins: refused, broke, bound. My stomach churned. These are people? Seraphine nodded once. Those who entered, she said. Those who fed it. I traced a finger near the edge of the page without touching. The names felt like graves. How many left? I whispered. Seraphine's voice was flat. Fewer than you want to know, she said. I looked up at her. And you? Her eyes flicked away. My name is written, she said quietly. But it is not crossed out. The implication hit me like a blow. She'd never left. Not once. A thought surfaced sharp. Why did you let me see that? I asked. Seraphine's gaze returned, steady. Because you are not the first human who thought he could bargain with a monster, she said. And you will not be the last. My throat tightened. So you think I'm going to fail? I think you are human, she said. That is not an insult. It is a warning. The room darkened slightly as if the candles dimmed. A low hum filled the air, almost too low to hear, vibrating through bone. Seraphine stiffened. It is coming, she murmured. What is? I asked, pulse racing. Seraphine looked toward the far end of the library. The shadows between shelves thickened, gathered as if poured. Then a figure stepped out. A man, tall, elegant, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the candlelight. His hair was dark, his face handsome in a way that felt rehearsed. His eyes were not crimson like Seraphine's. They were a deeper red, like fresh blood. He smiled as if he'd walked into a party. Seraphine, he said, voice smooth. My faithful jailer. Seraphine's entire body went rigid. Her hand moved toward the dagger at her cloak. I stood frozen, heart pounding. Lucien, I whispered. His gaze slid to me and I felt it like a hand inside my chest, probing for cracks. Ah, he murmured. The new offering. I swallowed hard. I'm not. Lucien raised a finger, silencing me without touching. Do not waste breath, he said. Breath is for those who are leaving. Seraphine's voice was low, dangerous. You cannot be here, she said. The seal. Lucien's smile widened. The seal is a story, he replied. And stories can be rewritten. The candles flared suddenly, then steadied. Lucien's gaze returned to me. Elias Ward, he said, savoring my name. You carry grief like a crown of thorns. My hands clenched. Stay out of my head. Lucien laughed softly. Your head is the only place worth being, he said. It is full of doors. Seraphine stepped between us, cloak spreading slightly like wings. He has vowed, she snapped. He will not invite you. Lucien's eyes gleamed. Vows? He murmured, amused. I remember when you believed in them too. Seraphine's jaw tightened. Leave, she said. Lucien tilted his head. I cannot, he replied, voice almost gentle. Not yet. He took a step closer and the air tasted metallic. My skin prickled, every instinct screaming. Lucien looked at Seraphine with something like affection. You've been lonely, he said. I can smell it on you. Seraphine's voice trembled with fury. Do not speak of what you have no right to. Lucien's gaze slid back to me. She thinks she is saving you, he said. How charming. I swallowed hard. I'm not your offering. Lucien's smile softened, almost kind. You are not an offering, he agreed. You are an invitation waiting to happen. My stomach twisted. Seraphine's hand finally drew the dagger, blade catching candlelight. Go back to your chamber, she snarled. Lucien's eyes flicked to the blade. He sighed theatrically. Still clinging to steel, he said. As if it ever stopped me. Then he leaned closer to me, close enough that I smelled him. Rose and blood and something like old paper. Tell me, Lucien whispered, do you ever dream of the water? Do you ever feel her fingers on your wrist, pulling you down? My breath caught. I couldn't speak. Lucien's smile widened. Yes, he murmured. The palace showed you. Seraphine lunged, dagger slicing through the air toward Lucien's throat. Lucien didn't move. The blade passed through him like smoke. Seraphine stumbled, shock flashing across her face. Lucien chuckled. "I am not here," he said softly. "Not fully. But I am near enough to taste." His eyes locked on mine. "You vowed not to invite me," he said. "How noble." Then his voice dropped, intimate. "But vows do not forbid you from wanting." A cold wave washed through me. My knees almost buckled. Lucien stepped back, his form already thinning into shadow. "I will see you soon," he murmured to me. Then to Seraphine, "And you, my dear, will finally get what you begged for." His smile turned cruel. An ending. And then he was gone, swallowed by darkness that seeped back between the shelves. The library felt colder. I stared at Seraphine. She stood rigid, dagger still raised, her face pale even for her. "You saw him?" I whispered. Seraphine's eyes were fixed on the spot where Lucien had stood. "Yes," she said, voice hollow. "He can reach us." Seraphine lowered the dagger slowly. "He can reach you," she corrected. "That is why you are here." My chest tightened. "So I really am bait." Seraphine finally looked at me. In her eyes was something raw, fear sharpened into determination. "Yes," she said. "And I am sorry." The apology was so unexpected it broke something in me. Before I could respond, the record book on the table flipped its pages violently as if caught in a storm. The ink-dark words rearranged themselves. A new line wrote itself across the bottom of the page, in handwriting that wasn't the palace's curling script. It was sharp, confident. "Lucien's. See you at the throne." We didn't speak for a long time after Lucien's visitation. Seraphine led me out of the library and into a corridor that felt narrower than before, as if the palace itself leaned closer to hear what we'd say. When we finally reached a small room, an antechamber lined with cracked mirrors, Seraphine shut the door and turned to face me. Her composure was back, but it was the composure of someone holding a blade by the edge. "You must listen," she said. "And you must not interrupt." I crossed my arms, more to keep from shaking than to posture. "Fine." Seraphine inhaled, unnecessary for her I realized, but habitual, like a memory of being alive. "I made my mistake in a room like this," she said, gesturing toward the mirrors. "A room that reflects not your face but your hunger." I glanced at the mirrors. My reflection looked wrong, slightly delayed, eyes too dark. Seraphine continued. "When I was turned, I believed I had gained power," she said. "I believed Lucien's promises, immortality, freedom, a throne." Her voice turned bitter. "But immortality is not freedom. It is endurance." I stared at her, seeing the weight in her posture now, centuries held in straight shoulders. "Lucien does not love," she said. "He consumes. He enters people the way smoke enters a house, through any crack. And once inside, he makes the house believe it is on fire." My throat tightened. "I tried to bind him," she said. "I used the palace, used its threshold laws. I tricked him into stepping into the throne room under a vow. I sealed the door." "And the palace sealed you with him," I murmured. Seraphine nodded. "It punished me for forcing it into my war," she said. "It does not like being used. It likes bargains that benefit itself." I looked at the mirrors again. "So now it wants a new bargain," I said. "Yes," Seraphine replied. "A human tether." I swallowed. "Why does Lucien need one?" Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "Because he is bound by thresholds too," she said. "He cannot cross from the throne room into the outer palace without invitation, without a human opening themselves as a door." My stomach churned. "So if I invite him, he can wear me." Seraphine's eyes flashed. "Yes," she said. "He will hollow you out and walk your life like a costume." My hands shook. "Then we don't let that happen." Seraphine's expression tightened. "We cannot simply refuse," she said. "The palace will escalate. It will torture you with what you want until you break." My jaw clenched. "So what's the plan?" Seraphine stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "We go to the throne room," she said. My breath caught. "That's insane." "It is necessary," she replied. "Lucien is growing closer. The seal is weakening. If we do nothing, he will find another way. And if we go there?" I demanded. "What do we do?" Seraphine's gaze held mine, steady and grim. "We strengthen the seal," she said. "Or we end him." I stared, heart pounding. "Can you kill him?" Seraphine's lips pressed into a thin line. Not alone, she admitted. But the chalice responds to human choice. Your vow has power here. Your grief, your love, these are not weaknesses in this place. They are weapons. I laughed harshly. That's poetic. But I'm just a guy with a camera. Seraphine's expression sharpened. You are a man who survived, she said. And survival has a violence to it. Use it. She turned toward the door. We go now, she said. I hesitated. Wait, I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. If this is so dangerous, why haven't you tried before? Seraphine paused. The silence stretched. Then she answered, voice quiet. Because I was afraid, she said. The admission shocked me. Not because vampires couldn't fear, but because Seraphine had seemed carved from control. I was afraid, she repeated, that if I faced him again, I would remember what it felt like to want what he offered. Her eyes lifted to mine. Crimson, steady but haunted. That is the truth, she said. And the palace would use it. My throat tightened. I understood that kind of fear. The fear of your own weakness, the fear of the part of you that still longs for what destroyed you. I'm afraid too, I admitted quietly. Seraphine nodded once. Good, she said. Then you are awake. She opened the door. The corridor beyond was darker than it should have been. The palace heartbeat seemed louder now, as if it knew where we were going. As we stepped out, a whisper slid along the walls, not Mara this time. Lucien's voice, soft and amused. Come. The path to the throne room was not straight. It wound downward through staircases that spiraled too many times, through halls where the air grew colder and the stones seemed damp, as if we were descending into the palace's throat. The red moonlight faded. Candlelight became scarce. Shadows thickened until my flashlight felt weak, like a match held against an ocean. Seraphine walked ahead, her posture rigid. She didn't need light. Her eyes glowed faintly, crimson reflecting off wet stone. We passed doors carved with symbols that made my vision blur if I stared too long. Once I saw a handprint on the wall, human, smeared in dried brown. I looked away quickly. Don't touch anything, Seraphine warned softly. As if I want to, I muttered, but my voice shook. The palace heartbeat grew louder the deeper we went. It wasn't just sound now, it was vibration. I felt it in my teeth, in my bones. Finally we reached a corridor that ended in a single door. It was taller than any door should be, black stone carved into the shape of intertwined bodies, humans, vampires, beasts, twisting around each other in a spiral that led to a central lock. There was no keyhole. At the center was a circle of silver, tarnished, set into the stone like an eye. Seraphine stopped before it. Her face was unreadable. This is the inner door, she said. My throat tightened. And behind it? Lucien, she said. And the throne. I swallowed hard. How do we open it? Seraphine lifted the chalice from within her cloak. She carried it without me noticing. The metal caught faint light, cold and heavy. She held it up to the silver circle. The circle pulsed once like a blink. Then a voice spoke, not Lucien's, not Seraphine's. The palace. It didn't come from the door. It came from everywhere, from the stone itself, from the air. What will you give? My stomach lurched. The words weren't loud, but they were absolute. They made my bones feel small. Seraphine's voice was steady. We have already given, she said. We have fed you memory. The air vibrated again. Not enough. Seraphine's jaw tightened. I stepped forward, surprising myself. What do you want? I demanded, voice echoing in the corridor. The silver circle pulsed, and the palace answered. Choice. Seraphine's gaze flicked to me sharply. Elias. But the palace spoke again before she could stop me. One of you will stay. My blood ran cold. No, I whispered. Threshold law, the palace intoned like scripture. Seraphine's face went still. It is forcing the old bargain, she murmured. My hand shook. I'm not staying here. The palace pulsed again. Then she leaves. He enters. The implication slammed into me. If Seraphine left, Lucien would enter the outer palace, free. Seraphine's voice was low. It will trade, she said. It wants to change its story. My heart pounded. So what do we do? Seraphine stared at the door, then at me. We refuse, she said. The palace vibrated, amused. Refusal is a story too. My skin prickled. What does that mean? Seraphine's gaze hardened. It means it will punish refusal, she said. It will make refusal hurt until you choose. A cold laugh echoed faintly, Lucien's, from behind the door. Choose carefully, he murmured, voice like silk through stone. I do love a man with principles. My stomach churned. Seraphine lifted the chalice again, pressing it harder to the silver circle. Open, she commanded. The circle flared crimson. The palace voice returned, sharper now. Payment. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Take mine, she said. I turned to her, shocked. What? Seraphine didn't look at me. Take my memory, she said to the palace. Take my name. Take whatever you want. Open the door. My throat tightened. No, I said, stepping closer. You can't just. Seraphine's gaze snapped to me. Yes, I can, she hissed. I have paid for centuries. I will pay again if it means he stays bound. The palace pulsed, considering. Then it spoke, slow and cruel. Her memory is dried. Seraphine flinched as if struck. I stared. What does that mean? Seraphine's voice was quiet, bitter. It means I have given it too much already, she said. It has drained me. My memories no longer satisfy. The palace voice pressed in, hungry. His memory is fresh. Met me. My mouth went dry. The corridor felt like it was shrinking around my lungs. Seraphine stepped closer, lowering her voice. Elias, she said, and the way she said my name wasn't ownership. It was plea. If it takes your memory, it will hollow you. You will become a shell. But I might survive, I whispered. Seraphine's eyes flashed. And Lucien stays bound, she finished. I stared at the door, at the carved bodies twisting into the lock. The palace demanded a sacrifice, and it didn't care whose, only that it fed. Lucien's voice murmured again, amused. Give it what it wants, he coaxed. And I'll give you what you want. My stomach turned. Shut up, I snapped, voice echoing. Lucien laughed softly. Your sister is cold, he whispered. I could warm her. My hands clenched. Rage surged up, hot and sudden. Seraphine's hand touched my arm, cold and steady. Do not listen, she warned. I breathed hard, fighting the urge to scream. Then the palace spoke again, quieter now, almost intimate. Give your heart. Or give her to him. I stared at Seraphine. Her face was stone, but her eyes held something like resignation. She'd expected this. She'd known it would come down to me. The major twist hit me then, not in plot but in my understanding. Seraphine hadn't brought me here to help her escape. She'd brought me here because she needed someone who could choose her over himself. And the palace knew it. My throat tightened. If I let it take my memory, I began. Seraphine's voice was careful. You may forget who you are, she said. You may forget why you love. You may forget her. My chest tightened like a fist. Forget Mara. The one thing I'd been punishing myself with. The one thing that kept me tethered to being human. If I lost that, what would be left? Lucien whispered through stone, seductive. Or, invite me. And I will carry your grief for you. I squeezed my eyes shut. My vow burned in my mind like a brand. I opened my eyes and looked at Seraphine. She wasn't begging. She wasn't manipulating. She was simply there, waiting as she had waited for centuries. A jailer who had never been relieved. I thought of Mara's voice in the wardrobe. Not her. Allure. Trap. I thought of my own obsession with ruins, with emptiness, with places that echoed because I wanted to hear something answer back. I thought of the moment on the bridge when I looked down at my phone. One mistake. I made a decision before my fear could undo it. I'll pay, I said hoarsely. Seraphine's eyes widened slightly. Elias. I'll pay, I repeated louder, to the door to the palace. My hands shook but my voice steadied. Take what you want from me. But you don't let him out. The silver circle pulsed, hungry. Agreed. The word hit like a verdict. The door began to open. Not outward, downward. The stone sank into the floor like a mouth opening. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of old blood and roses. Seraphine grabbed my arm, her grip tight. Stay close, she whispered, voice strained. Whatever happens, do not speak an invitation. I nodded, swallowing fear. The gap widened. Darkness waited beyond. And from inside, Lucien's laughter drifted out like smoke. Welcome, he said. Elias Ward. Crossing the threshold felt like stepping into deep water. The air changed instantly, thicker, colder, heavy with pressure that made my ears ring. The darkness inside wasn't absence of light. It was presence, a substance. The throne room was vast, circular, ceiling lost in shadow. Black stone columns rose like fangs. The floor was carved with a spiral pattern that pulled the eye inward toward the center. And at the center stood a throne. It was not ornate in the way of human royalty. It was simple, brutal, black stone shaped like a rib cage curved to hold a body the way a coffin holds a corpse. On it sat Lucien. Not a projection now. Not smoke. Real. He looked almost human at first glance, handsome, composed, dressed in black that fit him like night. But his stillness was wrong. Too still. Like a statue that had learned to speak. His eyes opened as we entered, red deeper than Seraphine's, and I felt his gaze like fingers under my skin. Seraphine stepped forward, dagger in hand. "Do not move," she said. Lucien smiled slowly. "My love," he murmured. Still playing the hero. Seraphine's jaw clenched. "I am not your love," she snapped. Lucien sighed, feigning sadness. "You were," he said. "Once." The words made Seraphine flinch, just a fraction. That fraction was enough for Lucien to notice. His eyes flicked to me. "And you," he said softly. "The willing sacrifice." My throat tightened. "I didn't come for you." "No," Lucien agreed, voice silky. "You came for her." I froze. Seraphine's grip on her dagger tightened. Lucien leaned forward slightly on the throne, like a man interested in a game. "Tell me, Elias," he said. "Do you know why the palace chose you?" I swallowed. "Because it's hungry." Lucien chuckled. "Yes," he said. "But hunger is not random. Hunger is preference." He stood, rising from the throne with the grace of something that didn't obey gravity the same way. The air seemed to bend around him. Seraphine lifted her dagger, stepping between him and me. Lucien stopped, amused. "Do you really think that toy will matter?" he asked. Seraphine's voice was cold. "It is not the dagger," she said. "It is the vow behind it." Lucien's smile widened. "Ah," he murmured. "The vow." His gaze slid to me again. "You swore not to invite me," he said. "How noble." My chest tightened. Lucien began to circle, slow, predatory, though he didn't move like a beast. He moved like a man in a ballroom, measured and elegant. "You think invitation is words," he said. "But invitation is desire. It is opening." He stopped near me, close enough that my skin prickled with cold. "Tell me," he whispered, "do you desire to stop hurting?" My throat tightened. I didn't answer. Lucien's smile softened. "Of course you do," he murmured. "You've been punishing yourself for years. Carrying her death like a stone in your chest. Do you know what that does to a man?" His voice deepened, intimate. "It makes him easy to enter." Seraphine snarled and lunged again, dagger cutting through air. This time the blade met something solid. Lucien caught her wrist with one hand, effortlessly stopping the strike. His fingers closed around her like a shackle. Seraphine hissed, eyes flashing. Lucien leaned close to her face, smiling. "I missed you," he whispered. Seraphine's voice shook with fury. "Let go." Lucien's gaze slid to me, still holding Seraphine. "You see," he said softly. "She is still mine in the way a scar is still yours." Seraphine's eyes widened and I saw it, rage, fear, and beneath it, something she hated, memory. Lucien released her wrist with a casual shove. Seraphine stumbled back, catching herself, eyes blazing. Lucien's smile turned to something sharper. "Now," he said, "the payment." The air vibrated. The palace heartbeat surged, louder here, as if the throne room was its heart chamber. The spiral carved into the floor began to glow faintly, dark red lines like veins filling with blood. My stomach dropped. "What's happening?" I whispered. Seraphine's face went pale. "The palace is collecting," she said. Lucien's gaze fixed on me. "You offered yourself," he said softly. "Do not disappoint it." A pressure built in my chest, like hands squeezing my ribs inward. My vision blurred at the edges. I staggered, grabbing a column to stay upright. Seraphine stepped toward me, panic flashing across her controlled face. "Elias," she hissed. Lucien's voice was calm. "Let it," he said. "It will take what it takes." The pressure tightened. My head filled with a roaring sound like ocean water. Memories flashed. Mara laughing in a sunlit kitchen. Mara driving with one hand on the wheel. Mara's hair floating in dark water. I gasped, trying to hold on to them. Seraphine's hand grabbed mine, cold and fierce. "Hold on," she whispered. "Fight it." Lucien watched, amused. "You cannot fight hunger," he said. "You can only feed it." The pressure spiked and something tore. Not flesh, something inside my mind. A memory slipped away, suddenly unreachable, like a word on the tip of the tongue that vanishes. I panicked. No. Another memory peeled off. The smell of Mara's shampoo, the sound of her laugh. I screamed, sound echoing in the vast room. Seraphine's grip tightened. "Elias, look at me," she demanded. "Stay here. Stay in your body." But the palace was inside me now, pulling. Lucien stepped closer, voice low. "Let go," he whispered. "And I will carry it for you." My vow burned in my mind. I shook my head violently. No. The pressure surged again. A new memory surfaced, not Mara. Seraphine. Her face in candlelight. Her voice saying she was a prisoner. Her hand bleeding on the wardrobe door. Why was I remembering that? Lucien's smile widened. "Yes," he murmured. "Take her too. Let the palace take your attachment." My stomach twisted. "What?" Seraphine's eyes widened, horror flashing. "Elias," she whispered, "it is shifting." The twist hit me with brutal clarity. The palace wasn't just taking Mara. It was taking whatever tethered me to resisting. It was taking the vow itself by eroding the meaning behind it. If it took my memory of why I vowed, the vow would become empty words. Lucien watched with delighted patience. "You see," he whispered, "the palace and I understand each other. It wants you hollow so you can be filled." Seraphine's voice went sharp. "Stop," she snarled, not to Lucien but to the palace itself. She stepped forward into the spiral lines, dagger raised, and cut her own arm deeply, letting dark blood spill onto the glowing grooves. The lines flared brighter, drinking it. Lucien's smile faltered slightly. "Seraphine," he warned. She ignored him, eyes blazing. "Take me instead," she hissed to the palace. "Take my blood. Take my centuries. Leave him." The palace heartbeat thundered. The pressure on my chest eased for one breath. I clung to that breath like salvation. Seraphine staggered as if something yanked at her from the inside. Her face twisted with pain, not physical but something deeper, like being emptied. Lucien's eyes flashed with anger. "You would starve yourself for him?" he snarled. Seraphine's voice trembled, but it was steady. "I would do anything," she said, "to end you." Lucien's expression darkened. The charm dropped, revealing something monstrous beneath: hunger, rage, ancient entitlement. "Then I will take you both," he hissed. He moved. So fast I barely saw it. He grabbed Seraphine by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Her dagger fell, clattering. I surged forward without thinking, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him away. His skin was cold as stone. Lucien's gaze snapped to me. "Ah," he murmured, almost pleased. "There. That is opening." My stomach dropped. "No." Lucien smiled and his eyes burned red. "Invite me," he whispered. Seraphine choked, struggling, eyes wide. The palace heartbeat roared, demanding. I felt the crack in me widen, the crack of grief, of guilt, of terror. For one horrible second I wanted to say yes, just to stop the pain, just to make it end. And that one was the door. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. "I won't," I rasped. Lucien's smile turned cruel. "Then watch," he said. He tightened his grip on Seraphine's throat, and her eyes rolled back slightly. Something in me snapped, not into surrender but into rage. I grabbed the fallen dagger and drove it into Lucien's arm. The blade sank in. Lucien hissed, shock flashing across his face. Black blood welled around the wound. Seraphine dropped to the floor, gasping. Lucien stared at the dagger in his arm, then at me, eyes wide with fury. "You," he breathed, voice trembling with hatred. "You dare." My hands shook, but I held the dagger steady. "Get away from her," I snarled. Lucien's lips curled. "Fine," he whispered. "We will do it another way." He stepped back, pulling the dagger out as if it was nothing. Black blood dripped onto the spiral lines. The palace drank it eagerly. Lucien smiled again, calm returning like a mask. "You have already paid," he said softly to me. "And soon, You will forget you ever resisted. Then he turned, walking back toward the throne, leaving us in the center of the spiral like offerings. Seraphine crawled to her dagger, breathing hard. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw something raw, gratitude, fear, and something else I didn't have a name for. We have to end this, she whispered. My head throbbed. Memories flickered at the edges, fragile. I could feel them loosening like teeth. How? I rasped. Seraphine's gaze snapped to the chalice still hanging at her side. The threshold, she whispered. We use it against him. We make him cross without invitation. My stomach twisted. How do you do that? Seraphine's lips pressed thin. By making him chase, she said. Lucien's laughter echoed from the throne. Oh, he purred. Run. I do love it when they run. We ran. It wasn't heroic. It was messy, panicked motion. Seraphine pulling me by the arm, my feet slipping on cold stone, my head pounding with the terror of forgetting. Behind us, Lucien's footsteps were silent. That was the worst part. You can outrun a sound. You can measure distance by it. Silence is limitless. We tore through corridors that shifted, the palace rearranging itself as if delighted by the chase. Doors slammed shut in our path only to open into new halls. Staircases twisted. Shadows thickened. Seraphine moved with desperate precision, as if she had mapped this route in her mind long ago, waiting for a chance to use it. Where are we going? I gasped, lungs burning. Seraphine didn't look back. To the threshold chamber, she snapped. My head swam. Memories fluttered like loose papers in wind. I tried to hold onto Mara's face, but it blurred at the edges. Seraphine, I panted, I'm losing. I know, she said fiercely. Hold on. Lucien's voice drifted behind us, amused. Elias, he called softly. Do you remember the taste of water? My stomach clenched. The memory surged, cold black water filling my lungs, Mara's eyes wide. I stumbled. Seraphine yanked me upright. Do not listen, she hissed. We burst into a room I hadn't seen before, a circular chamber with no windows, walls carved with countless doors of different sizes and styles. Wooden cottage doors, iron gates, ornate palace doors, simple modern apartment doors. Each one stood sealed, handles gleaming faintly in the dark. At the center of the room was a pool of still water, black as ink, reflecting nothing. Seraphine slammed the chamber door behind us and pressed her palm to it, whispering words in a language that made my skin prickle. The door's surface shimmered, sealing. I turned in a slow circle, overwhelmed. What is this place? The threshold chamber, Seraphine said, breathing hard. Every door the palace has ever swallowed. My throat tightened. And the pool? Seraphine's eyes flicked to it. The mirror, she said. Where the palace shows you what you want. A soft laugh echoed from the other side of the sealed door. Lucien. You cannot lock me out, he called, voice smooth. This place is my cradle. Seraphine ignored him, dragging me toward the center pool. What are you doing? I demanded, panic rising. Seraphine's eyes burned. We will make him cross, she said. He cannot enter the outer palace without invitation, but he can enter this chamber if the palace allows it. And it will, I whispered, realization dawning. Because it wants him free. Seraphine nodded sharply. Yes, she said. So we give it a different story. She thrust the chalice into my hands. The metal was ice-cold, vibrating faintly. You, she said, will be the threshold. My stomach lurched. What does that mean? Seraphine's gaze held mine, fierce. You will invite him, she said. I stared, horror flooding me. No. I vowed. You will invite him, she repeated, voice hard, into the chalice. I froze. Into the... Seraphine nodded quickly. The vow was not to invite him into you, she said. The chalice is an object of choice. It can hold a crossing. My breath caught. You're saying I can speak the invitation but redirect it? Yes, she said. But you must mean it. The palace reads intention. Lucien's voice purred from behind the sealed door. What are you planning, Seraphine? She didn't answer him. Instead, she turned to the pool. Her face softened, just for a heartbeat, and in that softness I saw the woman beneath the centuries. If we fail, she whispered, he will take you, and the palace will take what remains. My throat tightened. And if we succeed? Seraphine's eyes locked on mine. Then he is contained, she said, and the palace must release its payment. My head throbbed. Payment. My memory's already slipping. How much was left to bargain with? Lucien's laughter drifted again, closer now, as if he pressed his ear to the door. Elias, he whispered, voice intimate. Do you remember why you came here? My mind flashed. Views, algorithm, hunger for a story. Then another image. Mara's face, blurred. I gritted my teeth. Stop, I whispered. Seraphine grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Elias, she said urgently, you must anchor yourself. Tell me something true. Now. My throat tightened. The truth rose raw. I hate myself, I whispered. For looking down at my phone. For surviving. For letting her die. The words shook out of me like poison. Seraphine's eyes softened. Good, she said fiercely. That is real. Hold it. The sealed door trembled. Lucien's voice turned sharper. Open, he demanded, and the single word vibrated through stone like a command. The door's surface shimmered, wavering. Seraphine's jaw clenched. He is pushing, she hissed. I clutched the chalice, hands shaking. What do I say? Seraphine's voice was low, intense. You say, Lucien Vesper, I invite you to cross. And you pour your intention into the chalice. You imagine him contained. You imagine him trapped. My stomach churned. And the palace? Seraphine's lips curled. Let it watch, she whispered. Let it learn it cannot always win. The door shuddered again. Cracks of red light appeared along its edges. Lucien's voice seeped through, velvet turning to hunger. Elias, he whispered, I can bring her back. My breath caught. The words hit my deepest wound. Seraphine's face went hard. He lies, she hissed. Lucien chuckled. Do I? He murmured. The palace can show you her. The palace can shape her. Invite me and I will make the shape breathe. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. For one horrible moment I pictured Mara alive, laughing, warm, whole. The crack in me widened. Seraphine's hand grabbed my wrist, right where the wardrobe had touched me. Her grip was fierce, grounding. Elias, she whispered, voice breaking slightly, if you do this for her, you will lose her anyway. You will lose yourself. I swallowed hard, eyes burning. The door began to open, forced by Lucien's will and the palace's hunger. Darkness spilled in like smoke. Lucien stepped through, smiling. He looked at me with satisfaction, as if he'd already won. Hello, he purred. My threshold. My hands shook violently around the chalice. Seraphine stepped to my side, dagger raised. Now, she whispered. Lucien's gaze flicked to her, amused. Trying again? He asked. I forced my voice out, hoarse and trembling but clear. Lucien Vesper, I said. His smile widened. I invite you to cross, I continued, and poured every ounce of will I had into the chalice, imagining it as a mouth that swallowed him, imagining it as a prison that snapped shut. Lucien's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something. What? Seraphine moved, slashing her dagger through the air, not at him but at the space between him and the open door, cutting the threshold line like severing a rope. The room shuddered. Lucien's form flickered. The chalice in my hands flared cold, then burning hot. Lucien snarled, suddenly furious. No. A force yanked him forward, not toward me but toward the chalice. His body blurred, sucked like smoke into a jar. He reached out, fingers clawing the air, eyes wide with rage. Elias, he screamed, voice no longer velvet. Open. I clenched my jaw, holding the chalice tight as if it could shatter. Lucien's face twisted, then collapsed inward like a flame sucked into darkness. Silence slammed down. The sealed doors lining the chamber all rattled at once, as if cheering or screaming. The pool in the center rippled, black water trembling. The chalice in my hands went suddenly cold again. Too cold. Seraphine staggered, breathless, eyes wide. For a heartbeat we just stood there, stunned by the impossible success. Then the palace heartbeat surged, angry now, furious. The chamber walls vibrated. A voice boomed from everywhere. Thief. Seraphine's face went pale. It is enraged, she whispered. My hand shook. Is he? Seraphine's gaze snapped to the chalice. He is contained, she said. For now. The chalice trembled. Faintly from within it I heard Lucien's voice. muffled, furious, like a man screaming from behind glass. Seraphine grabbed my arm. "We must leave," she hissed, "before the palace takes revenge." My head throbbed. Memories flickered, unstable. But one thing felt clear in my chest. I had not invited him into me. My vow held. We ran again, the palace shaking around us like the palace did not forgive theft. As we fled the threshold chamber, corridors convulsed. Stone groaned. Walls shifted. The air thickened with the smell of dust and old blood. Candles along the halls ignited on their own, flames flaring blue, then red as if the palace's mood colored the fire. Seraphine moved faster than I thought possible, pulling me along. The chalice throbbed in my hands like a living heart, cold and heavy. From within it, Lucien's muffled voice hissed, venomous. "You cannot hold me," he whispered. "You are human. Humans drop what burns." My teeth clenched. I didn't answer. Answering felt like opening. We burst into a corridor that ended abruptly in a wall where a doorway should have been. Seraphine swore under her breath, an old word, sharp. "The palace is closing paths," she hissed. My chest tightened. "So we're trapped." Seraphine's eyes flashed. "Not yet," she snapped. She pressed her palm to the wall, whispering again in that harsh language. For a moment nothing happened. Then the stone softened like wax under heat, and a door shape emerged. It opened. Beyond was the grand Gothic hall where I had first entered, the one with the towering pillars and the massive ornate front door. My stomach dropped. "We're back at the entrance." Seraphine nodded, jaw clenched. "The palace likes circles," she said. "Stories that return to their first line." We stepped into the hall. Red moonlight streamed through the arched windows, dust motes floating like ash. The massive front door stood there, closed, ornate, patient. I stared at it, breath catching. Freedom was right there, if it could be opened. The palace heartbeat roared, furious, vibrating through the pillars. The air thickened. Seraphine's gaze snapped toward the shadows at the far end of the hall. A figure emerged. Not Lucien, he was in the chalice, hissing and furious. This figure was made of shadow and stone, shaped like a man but wrong, too tall, too thin, limbs stretching like a nightmare. Its face was blank except for a mouth that opened too wide. The palace's avatar. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Payment." My stomach clenched. "It's coming for me," I whispered. Seraphine's eyes flashed. "For both," she corrected. The avatar stepped closer, silent, inevitable. I clutched the chalice tighter, knuckles white. Seraphine stepped in front of me, dagger raised. "We have paid," she said, voice hard. "We gave memory. We gave blood." The avatar's mouth widened. "Not enough." Lucien's muffled laughter seeped from the chalice like poison. "Yes," he purred. "Feed it, Seraphine. That's all you've ever done." Seraphine ignored him, eyes fixed on the avatar. "What do you want?" she demanded. The avatar's head tilted. "The story must end." A chill ran through me. "What does that mean?" Seraphine's jaw tightened. "It wants a conclusion," she whispered. "It wants a tragedy." The avatar stepped closer, and the air around it chilled so fast my breath fogged. "One must stay," it intoned again. My chest tightened. The bargain repeated, relentless. Seraphine's gaze flicked to me. In her eyes was calculation and something else. Acceptance. "No," I whispered, reading her. Seraphine's voice was quiet. "Elias," she said. I shook my head violently. "No. You're not doing that." Seraphine stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "The palace will not release us both," she said. "It will not allow a story without sacrifice." My throat tightened. "So we fight." Seraphine's expression softened in a way that made my chest ache. "You cannot fight a house," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Then we outsmarted again." Seraphine's gaze flicked to the chalice. Lucien hissed inside, furious. "The palace wants a tragedy," I said, thinking fast, panic sharpening my mind. "So we give it one." Seraphine frowned slightly. "What?" I stared at the massive front door. The first threshold. The law. The palace cared about thresholds, about invitations, about stories shaped by choices. What if the sacrifice wasn't a person? What if it was the palace's own hunger? My head throbbed, memories flickering at the edges, but one thought burned clear. I had come here chasing a story. The palace fed on stories. It wanted endings. Maybe the only way to escape was to deny it the ending it wanted. Elias, Seraphine whispered urgently, do not. But I was already moving. I stepped past her, toward the avatar, toward the front door, toward the heart of the hall where my mistake began. Seraphine grabbed my arm. What are you doing? She hissed. I turned to her. My voice shook, but it was steady enough. I'm finishing it, I said. Then I raised the chalice high so the red moonlight caught its tarnished surface. The avatar stopped as if startled. Lucien's muffled voice grew sharp. What are you doing? He snarled. I looked at the chalice, at the cold metal vibrating with contained rage. A terrible idea, bright and desperate, formed fully. The palace wanted Lucien free because he was hunger. It wanted him to make it a mouth. But Lucien was also bound by thresholds. Bound by invitation. I could offer the palace something it craved more than my memories. Lucien's hunger. Forever. Seraphine, I said quietly, how do you open the front door? Seraphine stared at me, realization dawning slowly. Horror and hope colliding. You can't, she whispered. It opens when it chooses. I nodded. Then we make it choose, I said. The avatar stepped forward, mouth widening. Payment. I took a breath, feeling my chest tighten with fear and grief and resolve. Then I spoke to the hall, to the listening stone, to the palace itself. I offer you Lucien Vesper, I said, voice echoing. Not as escape. As food. The hall vibrated. Dust motes shivered. The avatar froze. Lucien screamed inside the chalice, furious. No. I continued, voice shaking but loud. I offer you his hunger, contained forever. I offer you a story that never ends, an eternal feast. And in exchange. I swallowed hard, throat burning. You open the door, I said. You let us leave. The palace heartbeat thundered. The avatar's blank face tilted as if considering. Seraphine's hand tightened on my arm. Elias, she whispered, voice breaking. If it accepts, it will never let the chalice go. I looked at her, eyes burning. Then it won't, I said. Seraphine's eyes widened. You're? I nodded, throat tight. I'm giving it the ending it wants, I whispered. But not the one it expects. Seraphine shook her head, tears, actual tears, glinting at the corners of her eyes like rare jewels. No, she whispered. I won't let you. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. You said you were afraid of wanting what he offered, I whispered. Then let me want something else. Let me want you free. Her face went still. The words hung between us like a blade. Lucien's voice hissed from within the chalice, venomous. She will leave you, he spat. She will forget you. Humans are brief. She will outlast your sacrifice and laugh at your name. Seraphine flinched, jaw tightening. I looked at her. Will you? I whispered. Seraphine's crimson eyes locked on mine, fierce and wet. No, she said, voice trembling. I will not. The palace avatar stepped closer as if impatient. Agreed, the palace voice rumbled, slow and hungry. The massive front door clicked. The sound was small, but it was the sound of law changing. The ornate door began to open, slowly inward, letting in a gust of cold night air and the smell of rain. Red moonlight spilled in brighter, as if the outside world was desperate to reclaim us. The avatar reached toward the chalice. Seraphine's grip on my arm tightened painfully. Elias. I swallowed hard. My chest felt like it would split. I stepped toward the opening door. Then I turned, facing the avatar, holding the chalice out. Take it, I said. The avatar's shadowy hand closed around the chalice. Cold surged up my arm, biting, numbing. Lucien screamed inside, muffled and furious, his voice fading as the palace's grip tightened. The chalice was pulled from my hands. The moment it left my fingers, I felt something ease, like pressure lifting off my mind. My memories steadied, not restored, but no longer actively torn away. The avatar stepped back, chalice held like a prize. The front door opened wider. Seraphine stared at me, shaking. Come, she whispered, voice breaking. I took one step toward the door. Then another. The threshold loomed, carved wood iron, the line between captivity and night. Seraphine grabbed my hand, pulling me forward. As we crossed, the air snapped cold, like waking. The moment my foot hit the outside stone, the palace heartbeat fell silent behind us. The door slammed shut. Not slowly this time. Art. Final. The sound echoed through the mountains like a gunshot. We stood outside under the red moon, rain misting our faces, the palace behind us looming dark and silent, as if nothing had happened. Seraphine's hand was still in mine, cold but real. I breathed hard, lungs filling with wet air that tasted like freedom. Seraphine turned to me, eyes wide, tears tracking down her pale cheeks. "You did it," she whispered. I laughed once, shaky and broken. "We did," I corrected. Seraphine shook her head, voice trembling. "No," she said. "You." Her voice broke. She pressed her forehead to my shoulder, cloak damp in the rain. I stood there, stunned, arms hovering awkwardly, then finally, slowly, wrapped around her. She was cold. She trembled slightly. For a long moment we just stood in the rain, two prisoners suddenly released, unsure how to be anything else. Then Seraphine pulled back, looking up at the palace. Her face hardened again, but something had changed. The weight in her posture had shifted. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Seraphine stared at the silent doors. "The palace will feed," she murmured. "On him. Forever. Until it grows bored." "And if it grows bored?" I asked. Seraphine's gaze turned to me, crimson eyes steady. "Then we do not return," she said. I swallowed. "And my payment?" I asked, almost afraid. Seraphine's expression softened. "It took him instead," she said. "It accepted your bargain." I exhaled shakily, relief almost making me collapse. Then a terrible thought surfaced. "Mara," I whispered. "Do I still?" My chest tightened. I pictured my sister's face. Clear. Her laugh. Clear. The pain still there, sharp and real. I swallowed hard, tears burning. "Yes," I whispered. "I remember." Seraphine watched me carefully. "That is both gift and burden," she said softly. I nodded, voice rough. "I know." We stood under the red moon, rain falling, the vampire palace behind us silent and hungry, its doors sealed around the chalice and the king. And for the first time in years I felt something besides guilt. Not peace, but possibility. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like standing in the mud outside a nightmare and realizing your legs were still shaking because your body hadn't gotten the memo yet. We walked down the driveway in silence, the palace a looming shadow behind us. The iron gate stood open as if it had never been closed at all. My car was still there, slick with rain. The sight of it, ordinary, dented, human, hit me harder than I expected. I laughed once, breathless. Seraphine stopped near the car but didn't touch it as if it might burn her. "What now?" I asked, voice hoarse. Seraphine looked up at the sky. The red moon still hung swollen and wrong. "Now," she said, "we go where the palace cannot reach." "Can it reach beyond its walls?" I asked, fear creeping back. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "Not easily," she said. "Its hunger travels through stories, through obsession, through people who seek it." My throat tightened. "People like me." Seraphine nodded once. "Yes," she said. "Do you understand now why you were drawn?" I swallowed. "Because I wanted emptiness to answer back," I murmured. Seraphine's expression softened, almost gentle. "Yes," she said. And it did. I glanced at my camera in the passenger seat. It felt suddenly heavy with guilt. I'd filmed my own descent like it was content. "Did it record?" I asked quietly. Seraphine's gaze flicked to the camera, disdain flickering. "Machines cannot hold what this place is," she said. "Not fully." I hesitated. "But some of it?" I asked. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Why?" she demanded. "Do you want others to come?" My stomach clenched. I shook my head quickly. "No," I said. I swallowed. "I don't know what to do with what happened." Seraphine studied me, and something in her gaze softened again. "You are human," she said. "You make meaning from wounds." I stared at her. "And you?" I asked. "What do you do now?" Seraphine looked away toward the forest, rain dripping from her hair like ink. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have been a jailer for so long that freedom is unfamiliar." The vulnerability in her voice made my chest ache. I opened the driver's door and glanced at her. "Get in," I said. Seraphine hesitated, eyes wary. "I do not." "You do," I interrupted gently. "You do get to now." Seraphine's lips parted slightly as if she'd forgotten how to accept an offer. Then she slid into the passenger seat with stiff grace, cloak pooling like shadow. I started the engine. The sound was absurdly normal, a mechanical purr in a world that had contained living stone and ancient kings. As we drove down the mountain road, the palace vanished behind fog and rain, swallowed by night. For a long time neither of us spoke. Then Seraphine said softly, almost reluctantly, "You did not have to do that." I kept my eyes on the road. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." Seraphine's hands rested in her lap, pale fingers still. "You gave it him," she murmured. "You gave it an eternal feast." I swallowed. "Better than giving it you," I said. Silence. Then Seraphine's voice came softer, like a confession. "No one has chosen me over themselves in a very long time," she said. My throat tightened. "Maybe they would have if you'd let them," I said. Seraphine's gaze turned toward the window, rain streaking the glass. "Maybe," she murmured. But I did not believe anyone could. I glanced at her for a second, then back to the road. Her face was turned away, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way she held herself like someone expecting punishment even in freedom. "You're not going to become human again, are you?" I asked quietly. Seraphine's lips curved faintly, an almost smile, bitter. "No," she said. "There are no reversals for what I am." I nodded, swallowing. "Then what do you do with forever?" Seraphine's gaze shifted to me, crimson eyes steady. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "I learn how to live inside it." The road curved downward into thicker forest. The red moonlight faded behind clouds, leaving only the soft glow of my headlights and the rain. I felt something in my chest loosen, not healed, not erased, but shifted. Grief didn't disappear. It changed shape when you finally stopped using it as a prison. I thought of Mara. I thought of the crash. I thought of the palace whispering her voice. The pain was still there. But it was mine. Not the palace's. Not Lucien's. Mine. Seraphine's hand lifted slowly, hesitated, then rested lightly on the center console between us, not touching me but close enough to acknowledge I was real. I didn't look at her. I just kept driving, letting that small gesture settle in my chest like a quiet promise. Behind us, somewhere on a ridge under a bruised red moon, the vampire palace stood silent, doors sealed, hunger feeding on a king who would never be free. And inside me, the story I'd chased for views had turned into something else entirely. A choice.
The mistake that trapped me wasn't just stepping into the vampire palace. It was believing that guilt was the only way to honor what I'd lost. The palace tried to weaponize my grief because hunger always does. It finds the tender palace and passes until you open. But the way out wasn't denial or bravado or even punishment. It was a deliberate choice made while afraid, a choice to keep my pain as mine, to refuse the easy surrender, and to value another life beside my own. Sometimes the most human freedom isn't escaping a monster, it's refusing to become one in the name of relief.